Hello everybody and welcome to review log for Psychopaths Season 1. Or at the very least, the very poor attempt at it. According to previous videos that I made up or tried this hasn't gone really that well. Now how would I summarize this kind of a show in a video, in a short little video? Besides going about it in my usual manner, because this show is more than just a basic premise and its plot and its characters. It's more than just the show itself. It is something else. It is more an exploration of an idea, of a concept. But it must be experienced for that to be explained thoroughly, as you must witness it to completely understand what we are talking about and what the premise itself is. Although I do feel like that idea generally was not perhaps so well done in the show, in that they didn't explore more of its positive sides through the medium, but rather through implications and explanations. The idea I'm talking about is naturally the Sibyl system, which is, well, I suppose we'll just get on with the technical facts before talking about it. So let's start with the, let's start with the sound design, because that's always fun. The sound design department has done a rather good job, though in my opinion there was nothing exactly noteworthy. Well, besides some of the voice actors who were absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Some of the voice actors I did find to be, well, really good, really darn good. Well, that's more due to my tendency to like deep male voices, or voices with a lot of bass and grass behind them, but that's personal preference, and I'm not generally good at judging voice actors, so... Now the soundtracks themselves are definitely not bad, but I really didn't find anything memorable. But that might be just I feel like that's my personal preference, and I feel like there should have been something for me to enjoy far more there. However, I suppose I took a rather, shall we say, it took a far more surreal take to idea on the series, and I took it on a rather different level, which made me maybe enjoy the series quite a bit less than I should have. But I still enjoyed the series. And this unfortunately does reflect upon the sound designs just in general. I feel like they are better than I'm giving them credit for, but I cannot say for certain. So let's talk about the visual design, because this is far easier to judge. I feel like they did a very good job at generally just about everything in the visual design department, from designing the backgrounds, designing the settings, designing different kinds of areas for the events take place in, and the fact that they had holotechnology allowed them to create quite a wide variety of atmospheres and create quite a lot of settings which would not be reasonable, but that allowed for them to also suspend the reality quite a bit. Just in general, quite a lot of a lot of objects from the show were also quite fantastical in design, where they were kind of hard to believe would actually physically be even functional, but they were produced or drawn or created rather so believably enough that they, well, could maybe perhaps exist. And that just generally is pretty good for such a futuristic show, that it does enough for you to be easily able to buy into it. And I feel like just in general the art style is pretty darn fitting for the story, even though it isn't exactly as bleak as it could have been. Well, not the word could, that is rather key there, considering that they didn't want to go exactly for the most bleakest of outlooks on life, because after all, the set place that the show takes place in Japan, which was supposed to be in the story one of the only last safe places for humanity, rather. Or, well, that's a rather huge extrapolation, but let's just say it's one of the surviving societies, apparently. And in that manner, it's pretty good that they didn't go for as much bleakness as they could have. So yeah, I really do also like quite a lot of the character designs where they do look in that they fit in the same universe, but they are still reasonably different from one another, and they are quite unique. Well, not unique, but they are easily distinguishable from one another. Though this has been done with quite a lot of simple artistic tricks, they are still produced quite magnificently, I feel. And then let's talk about the story. Well, first, let's talk about the characters because they are quite simple to talk about. They are all, in my opinion, rather simple. Naturally, the great and grand villain here is... yeah, he's a bit more deep and he's a bit more complicated. But it is more due to his involvement in the Sibyl system that he becomes a bit more interesting, rather than him being interesting alone. But it's more due to him being so heavily tied in the whole Sibyl system and the whole reason behind the general meta-teaming plot, but that's besides the point. I still find most of the characters to be rather plain, not bad, but very usual and expected. That's not to say that they are bad, just there was nothing out of the ordinary. And the villains usually have such a wide variety of... They can range from the villains can vary so wildly that even Tsukishima wasn't himself like that extraordinary. But he was still entertaining. All of the characters are still good, and I feel like they are entertaining and they fulfill their purpose more than enough. And so I am quite happy with them. But again, they are nothing surprising to me. Then let's talk about the story. On its surface, the story is just in general a very general a detective story. That's just about all that it is. But it does explore the meta-narrative, or rather the application of the Sibyl system quite well. Now the story itself is not bad, and it is certainly creates a good ground and a good basis for this exploration of this system. But on its basis, it's actually quite a bit above average, I feel, considering that it has a very good execution and pacing to it, just in the grand scheme of things. And so even though this is one of the aspects where even taken as a separate, even removed almost completely from the, or just taken as a completely separate identity, the story would still be rather good, but it wouldn't be anything spectacular, at least for me. It would be just a very good detective story. Very good, so don't take that as an insult. But it definitely, in my opinion, serves mostly as an exploration for the Sibyl system, so I suppose it was kind of deserved for it to be only very good instead of excellent or astounding. But it isn't, as I said, it is very good, so it is as an as a crime-solving like character study, even, I suppose you could say character study of some of the detectives and the main villain himself. It is still really good. It is good. It is a very good thriller, kind of a thriller detective story, and in that way, it will always be entertaining. But the main point, what we will now get to in the 9 minutes after 9 minutes of rambling around, is that the show explores the concept of the Sibyl system, which is, frankly speaking, something that would almost deserve a video on its own. And that has been the main problem why it has taken me so long to actually even get this recorded. And that is because the idea itself is kind of hard to talk about just in short. It was very very convenient for them to just skip over the part where the Sibyl system was introduced into the society, because, well, let's be frank, that would be rather hard to reasonably explain, considering that it does have some negative connotations to it. It does restrict the freedom of the society. And that is one of the problems that I found in the show, that the Sibyl system has been shown mostly for its flaws and how, shall we say, evil and restrictive it seems. Whereas I, after a lot of introspection, have found that the Sibyl system would actually be quite good, shall we say. Because in the end, in the general scheme and how they have introduced that system, it is a self-correcting system. It is a mini society in itself, where after just normal judgments, it would also correct its errors, and those abnormal people who failed to have a psychopath reading, those would slowly be indoctrinated into the system, and in a way it would be self-repairing. It would fix all of its mistakes, and in that way it would have a wider range of reaches than any realistic system other than a biomechanical system such as this could have. It is interesting to think about what world would be to live under the Sibyl system, this besides from what we have seen. But what it would feel for someone from our generation to be inserted into that kind of setting. And the general inspection of its flaws is something that is very interesting to look about. Considering that it all works for the greater good in grand scheme of things, I would be actually inclined to say that yes, in general it would be for the greater good in the end. Though I suppose that would not allow humanity to advance into the general spacefaring race, but that is just a grand dream for humanity in the future, even now. But for the time being, I suppose that would be quite fulfilling to have an entire system live under that kind of protection. Though, because of its biomechanical systems, it would be nigh impossible to recreate that, and it generally would not support a, shall we say, even a solar system wide society. But it would be interesting just in general, considering that it certainly does rob you of a lot of your freedoms. But again, the show really does bring up the concept of freedom versus versus protection, and which one do you value more? It's explored quite well, even if it's not completely directly explored. But yeah, I'm just gonna. I can run around circles around this concept because it is really kind of interesting to think about, but it is hard to put into words. But in general, the show is freaking fantastic. I talked quite poorly about it here because it's kind of I judged it quite harshly, but that is due to the kind of admiration I have for the kind of story that they went with, because it takes guts to go with this kind of an alien concept. Well, it's not even alien, to be honest. It's in general a concept that kind of have been explored since the freaking 80s. But the way they did it and the execution that they went with is certainly unique. And the story itself supports this kind of setting, the exploration and character study quite well, and in such a way I absolutely loved the show. It's definitely one of the shows that I have like the most deepest affection for, because it is very, very unique, and it is certainly very entertaining, which is quite hard to do, to have an introspective, intelligent show yet remain entertaining. Though at some points I could say that they maybe went a bit far with the gore, but in few moments, so it's not that bad, and it's more to create the stark contrast with the Prim Society. So, yes. I love the show, and it's really hard to kind of just summarize it like this. But yeah, I might talk about the Sybil system. I might make another video about its flaws and flaws and advantages, considering that it certainly has both. But it certainly is a system that is worth thinking of, because it is pretty good, pretty interesting concept, and it is an interesting topic in and of itself. So yeah. Well, now I got to thinking about it again. So before I completely get sidetracked, I thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you in the future. Have a great day and stay awesome. Ganmu out. Thanks for watching, and I'll hope to see you all in season 2, which will hopefully begin tomorrow. Thank you for watching.